Hello, beautiful beings. So I have finally found my journals of my medicine woman kind of journey. There's probably about 40, I think, altogether that I counted. I found 2 boxes, which is cool because there's another 2 here. Excuse me. So I'm really excited to kind of share with you the entire journey that I undertook. Now, it started, my gosh, I even have a start date. It's unbelievable. On Saturday, the 15th of August, 2015. So that's 8 years ago. And I started with a 6-month program called the Rite of the 6 Moons. Now, this was a purification program. So essentially what it was is purifying the holistic vessel in order to seed in and nourish in kind of new habits and so forth like that, in order to provide a fertile ground for the next program which I was going on, which was called the Certificate of Healer Studies, and that was a 12-month program. So it was essentially seeding in fertile ground in which I could receive, or the holistic body could receive, the higher influx of frequencies of celestial light into the body via the avenues of teacher plants. And it was pretty amazing. So the first 6 months of this program, which was the Rite of the 6 Moons, it was really discombobulating for me. I'm reading some of my journal entries and stuff like that, and it's wild going back to that time frame and the way that I was talking to myself and the way that I was relating to myself. And it was just really, really fascinating. Now, the program is actually very structured. All of the programs through the Medicine Women's School are extremely structured, and there is a very set way of doing things. And that way is keyed into a lunar cycle. So there's a particular focus that you will have for the new moon, the first quarter, the full moon, and the last quarter. And always in the first lunar cycle, i.e. the first lunar month, it is basically a preparation month. So you're kind of preparing for what's coming next. So even though it is it's called Rite of the 6 Moons, it's actually a little bit longer because it's 7 moons, because there's like a preparation month beforehand, and then the 6 months that we work with the orchids, the mountain grasses, and the mountain grasses, the orchids. Oh my gosh, I can't even remember what they were. That's terrible. I'm so sorry. Sorry, guys. I had the book here, but I've lost it. And so there's specific protocols that you go through in order to kind of create sacred space, and then diet the teacher plants according to a specific structure and prayer that we used to do. There were dieting instructions that we used to take. You used to have to prepare the kind of space, and there was an altar, and it was actually it was a magical and spiritual intensive. So it was basically to facilitate powerful, comprehensive, and rapid energetic purification and cleansing, which purifies and cleanses all aspects of the self. As the use of the teacher plants happens, it facilitates molecular, physical, and metaphysical purification and cleansing. So basically, it created this environment in which the teacher plants, which are plants that are used in New Zealand to diet, we would ingest them ritualistically with the intention of creating the perfect pattern of the teacher plant internally within the holistic organism. And I went through many different rites of passage or initiations through this program as basically a energetic, metaphysical purification and cleansing process. It was wild, like super wild. And it taught me how to, in some ways, walk in balance or walk in equilibrium and harmony. There were 4 basic disciplines that we kind of went through, and it's basically cultivating a relationship between the physical, the emotional, the mental, and the spiritual bodies, and the relationship between each one, and what my relationship, was like, and how it's changed and kind of grown. So in the new moon, which is, I'm going to try and talk about the whole lunar month, but I'll see how long we go for. So the new moon was basically the physical body. The first quarter was the emotional, the full moon was the mental, and the last quarter was the spiritual. And it was essentially focusing on that kind of aspect, i.e. the physical, not only the physical body, but also your physical environment, and like creating the altar, finding pieces that represented a physical aspect and then placing them on the altar in the allocated places. And as you go through the month, you would find these particular items to place on your altar that would represent these different facets of self, i.e. the physical self, the emotional self, the mental self, and the spiritual self. And it was kind of quite cool because you also not only created this altar, which you would then use in the following months to actually diet the teacher plant at specific timeframes, but you would also use it to commune with the teacher plants, as well as creating and wearing a talisman and power that we kind of created through the time frame as well. And I'm just kind of seeing through my notes here. So is there anything interesting? Yeah, so basically for the new moon to the first quarter, it was dealing with the physical or the earth, and the direction was the north. It was basically, the physical or the etheric self. And we had to find a power object that symbolized that particular element. So there was obviously a personal focus and stuff like that. Now I'll read you my kind of summation of that particular cycle, and it was actually quite interesting and quite telling. So this week was challenging in the way that I had to be aware of my elemental earth self. I do inhabit my body, and I did notice that during the week there were lots of incidences where I was forced to stop and listen to what my physical body was trying to tell me. I thought that my relationship was quite balanced, and that when my body craved nourishment or food, I was able to discern what it needed and supply it with what it wanted. However, this is only one form of nourishment that the body needs, and I'm realizing that I'm missing out on other opportunities to listen to what my earth self needs. It's pretty fascinating. Nourishment in the form of exercise also came up, as well as the fastidious attention to my physical cleanliness. This was definitely an eye-opener and helped me to reflect more on what my earth elemental needed. There was also an incident where I was in a lot of pain from my hernia. Oh, that's right. I have an inguinal hernia, which is basically a hernia around the belly button. And it can flare up every now and then and can be quite excruciating, where I can almost stop breathing because it's so painful. And it has abated over the years, but it still every now and then flares up depending on what kind of food I've had, and or depending on what kind of conversations with others that I'm avoiding, because it's basically a massive churning occurs in my stomach, and it can flare up my hernia, which is a fascinating way for me to know also when I'm avoiding things. Note to self. This was the first time in a couple of years that it had given me any cause for alarm, as it had been so long. There was a time that I thought it was indigestion. After talking with some of the nurses at work, I also used to work at the like a major metropolitan hospital, in not only the endocrinology department, but like radiation oncology and palliative care, and also infectious diseases. And so I remember asking one of the endocrinologists, does this need to be fixed kind of thing? And she was like, don't have an operation and don't have surgery unless it's really, really necessary. And she said that they suggested that I have it looked at, and surgery might be the only option. Actually, my thoughts were on the location of the pain and what on a metaphysical level do I need to heal in order to get better, and heal on a physical level, therefore. Trauma from childbirth came up, and I need to look at this further. This is the connection that I need to explore more. In completing this week's discipline, I realized that there are multiple forms of nourishment that my earth elemental needs besides food, as I am very attuned to what my body wants in the form of food energy, and sometimes not necessarily so, just food. I need to also be aware that there are other forms of nourishment that are equally important in order to have a balance and clarity in the earth element. This I will be aware of moving forward, and also learned that I need to be doing more exercise to help build and sustain vitality so that I do not get fatigued. Fascinating. And then we move into kind of the next week, which is all about the water, the emotional self, finding the power symbol for the emotional self and putting it on the altar. And the emotional self is the energetic matrix which emotions express and soul and spirit function. It's a vital aspect of the metaphysical temple. And it talks about, the relationship that we have. And as a light worker, we see the emotional self as a powerful and supportive ally. And it's maintaining an awareness of the physical self as well as the emotional self. So you're kind of layering on it as you move through the kind of lunar cycle as well. So you're still being aware of the physical self, but also you're adding on another layer now, which is the emotional self. And what it kind of likes to do, what it doesn't like to do, the environment that it likes to be in, physical and or otherwise. And then it's just fascinating. An amazing sunrise, a realization came to me about the sun and how I derive energy or vitality from it. Could there be a way to tap into the solar light energy? Think that my elemental earth is telling me vitality or the sun, get outside more and amongst the energy and vitality of the sun or outdoors. Looks like lunches are outside from now on. So matter of fact, isn't it? Today was very challenging as I've been aware of my emotions and trying to remain neutral. But it seems that everywhere there were incidences that brought out extremes of behavior. I was also getting really angry and more angry. Realized that I couldn't lock myself away to remain neutral and keeping thinking it's my ego being a sabotage. Try not to lose control of me. Strange, really. Or is it anger within me that needs to be cleansed with love? How do I find the root of the anger? That is what needs to be transformed and transcended. How do I discover this? And do I need to, or just smother it with love? My God, I love the way sometimes that happens. And then there's basically the summary that kind of came from that particular week, lunar phase. The relationship that my emotional self can be extremely nurturing and extremely volatile, can be experienced by amazing highs and lows. Over the last lunar cycle, I have been more acutely aware of my emotions and how they impact my daily living. Interesting, by shining a light onto my emotions this week, I found that there have been moments that I've been tested, my emotional balance and clarity, being around people who have negative attitudes, being stuck on a train for 90 minutes and being bombarded with other people's emotional energy was extremely challenging. So fascinating. I learned that I have many emotions that are tied directly to physical reactions and locations in my body. By being non-attached to these emotions and removing the physical reaction, I can free up energy in my sacral chakra for intuition to flourish, come forth and be heard. Wow, fascinating. And then we move into the next kind of lunar phase, which was all about air, the mental self, and the east, the direction of the east, and trying to find that power object that we had. Now, for my earth elemental power object, I had this really cool little metal kiwi, because I'm a New Zealander, so that kind of made sense for me. And so that's what I found that I was using for my elemental earth self. And it doesn't say here. Aww. Yeah, fascinating. It doesn't say what it was. Will be important. That's okay. But the summation basically with my mental self, because I have a tendency to be very astral before I started these programs, like super up in my head 24/7 all the time. It was really interesting to see how this happened. So I have a very interesting and strong connection to my elemental air. Perhaps it is because I am a Gemini and it rules my sign. I've always been quick to grasp new ideas and concepts, and perhaps along the way, a little quick to discard what isn't interesting and dropping projects as I've gotten bored. There are many projects that lay half finished and forgotten along the way. I also noticed that my water elemental can be very volatile in its interactions with my air, leading to highly charged reactions to news, opinion, conversations, memories, etc. I did feel the need for more mental stimulation, and perhaps the stimulation is in the form of a task for my air elemental to do to distract it. So funny. And then for the last quarter, it was the fire, the spiritual self, and the direction was south. And so this is layering on the top as well. So it's to say, today was an amazing day. I spent out in the forest. Oh, that's cool. I was not able to check in with my elementals, but felt such peace and calm out in the wilderness. It's almost as if all my batteries are full with the amazing vastness of life and beauty. It was pretty amazing at nighttime when the stars are really bright, vibrant, and many. It is such an amazing sight seeing all the stellar light and being part of the beauty and expansiveness. Saw 2 shooting stars and made wishes for mankind. I feel like this is a great start to my spiritual discipline. All my spiritual batteries are full and bursting. Was there much to fill? Not really. Not really too sure. Can really only fill up to a point. I don't want to overflow. Perhaps I need to get a bigger vessel or empty out all the stuff that doesn't suit me and then start filling it up again. So practical, Alison, so practical. It has been a very difficult start to the day, full of challenges ahead. Just need to remember that I'm never alone. I have a big decision to make on whether I will stay in the house or whether I'll move somewhere else. Interesting. 2015, I don't even know where I was at that stage. And then we come to the summation. Let's see what's happening here. I have observed that I do indeed have a spiritual self that is present in my life. Oh, bless. I actually obviously thought that I didn't have one. I've been able to hear sparks of the divine and been able to interpret its presence. It has been a difficult week now. I've really felt like hiding away and feel like I am very alone. But at times the grief can be overwhelming. My intuition is a little voice of love in my head is a signal that spirit is present. The way that I can be wrapped in love and comforted when I am feeling lost and alone. Oh, bless. It has been hard to ascertain if it is spirit in my life, but I know that it has. There is no doubt. I just would like the connection to be stronger and more co-creation, and as opposed to sparks or glimpses now and again. Oh, that's lovely. Yeah, so that was basically my preparation month, and that's all that I'm going to talk about because it's actually quite long. In the next video that will be coming, we'll be talking about the orchids. So it's number 121 to 124 for the next lunar cycle. So there were 8, 16, 24. So there were 24 teacher plants that I went through in a 6 lunar cycle. So there were basically 4 every lunar month, and it was fully intense. The orchid collection is actually the alchemical elixirs of spiritual transformation, and they are the fairy remedies of the Patupaerehi, or the children of the stars from New Zealand. The first one was 121 forest orchid, then 122 fairy bouquet orchid, 123 spring orchid, and then 124 fairy scepter orchid. So I will talk about those in the next video that's coming up. So much aroha, and thank you for sharing this kind of walk down memory lane with me. So I'll see you soon. Bye.